All right. And I will spotlight me. Oh, I hear you. I say something like, "Are you guys ready?" It goes.
You're
So welcome to everybody. I'm going to spotlight me for a minute, so we can begin. Welcome to Story Night. If you are joining us, feel free to put a note. This is on YouTube, and if you, I believe the way it works is that if you have an ID on YouTube, you can leave a comment. But even if you don't, you can watch. But if you do have an ID, you can say hello to us. We are joined tonight by Jose, Priya, and Doug, and we've got I think it'll be a pretty good night for you. So I hope some of you have set aside time, and I'm going to talk about what we can look forward to in the future as well. My name is Stephen Gardner, in case you don't know me, but if you're watching this, there's no other reason you would be watching this, well, other than the fact that you know that this happens anyway. We've been doing Story Nights since 2014. Hi, Kim. So yeah, apparently this is out live and that we do at least have one person watching. We've been doing this in 2014 at the Cloverleaf Sports Bar and Grill, and until the last one we did live was in person was in March, and we've been doing this online ever since. I don't need to explain why. My hope is that we'll be back next year, not next year, sometime this year, that we'll be back live. I'm planning to get a shot, speaking of which. And when I say I'm planning to get a shot, it's not like I'm anywhere near the head of the line, so it could be quite a while before I get there. But the theme next month is going to be something like vaccines or shots or something. So we have not settled on that. We usually have this planned way out ahead, but I haven't been a big planner this year. I'm going to talk about last year. I don't know if you remember, I work in elections. We had an election. I'm still using that excuse. Thank you again for joining us. What we do is we tell stories here. When we have our live events, typically what we do is we give every storyteller 5 minutes. We set out a theme. It's a true story, autobiographical, live, no props, no notes, no singing. And at least singing can't be the dominant part of the event. Nobody can hear that dog barking, can you? A little bit? Okay, well, that's good. I kind of like ambient noise, and I'll mute my mic, though. I'll know to mute my mic. She could come scratching on the door. I won't be able to hold her and put her up. She doesn't like to be held, or she doesn't like me holding her. She loves me, but she doesn't like me holding her. And so there's that. Anyway, no props, no notes. Sometimes we compete, sometimes we don't. And it's been a fun community event, and I look forward to doing that some more. As always, we are joined by our friends from the Kitsap Regional Library, and Doug is here as well. And let's see, I'm going to switch that so that I am not, so I think we can see all four of us now. I'm going to turn the time over to Jose and Priya from Kitsap Regional Library. They're going to talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about. They haven't screened this with me. So who wants to go first, and I'll spotlight you?
I can go first.
Okay. Let me turn on the spotlight. You are on.
All right. Well, good evening, friends. I hope that your new year was full of good things, and also your Christmas. I stay inside my home most of the time, like maybe all of us. So I want to share my screen really quick to show you all how to apply for a library card. That's a super common question that we receive on Live Answers. And please do not look at my monthly report. That's okay, now it is. So here is like the library webpage. If you go to let me see if I can zoom the library. Okay, I just zoom it a lot. care.org/cards. You will see this wonderful page posted by our communications department, and it's like pretty easy. You will find a series of like documents if you are resident of Kitsap County and you need a library card, you can hit over apply now. If you're with the Bremerton School District, you can go to the fourth um, slot here where it says like BSD student library card, and then you apply for a library card from there. But I'm going to explain really quick on how to do it from our webpage here. If you go to care.org/cards, then you hit apply online, and then you will go straight into our catalog database. And the first thing that you must need to know is like, which is the branch that is near you. In this case, I will select Sylvan Way, which is my nearest library branch. And I'm going to put the zip code 98310. Australia, Canada, New Zealand. That's interesting. Well, and then of course USA, and then you hit continue, and then you have to fill out this application right over here. I'm not going to do that right now because I have my own library account and I don't want to duplicate, but after you fill this information, you can select a username here, and after you select that username, enter a password of your choice and hit submit. Once you are there, you will have access to the catalog, and you will be able to put holds. You will receive an email with a library card number, which will start with pack reg. Don't get nervous. That's like a temporary card number while we issue physical library cards. Then after we reopen our doors, then you can have a physical library card with you. Um, that will give you access to a online catalog that we name Overdrive. Priya, I think that she's going to explain how to work with Overdrive in a second. But for example, after, let's say that you did all this process and you forgot your password, go back to kara.org, hit contact and email, and fill this form, and you can say, hey, I forgot my library card password, and we will send you like a link in where you can access and request your library card password. Remember that you would need to confirm your date of birth and your address in order for us to give us like your password back on your email. But it's really easy. It's available 24 hours, and also our catalog is available 24 hours, and also Overdrive is available 24 hours. So it's our intention to keep you connected during this time, and hopefully we will reopen soon after all this pass. So now, thank you for your attention, and I will pass my virtual mic to Priya.
Thank you, Jose. So I'm just going to provide a little bit more information about one of the resources you can access online with your new card that you've signed up for, thanks to Jose's helpful instructions. I'm going to share real quick. Awesome. So if you are on our website, one thing that you can access with your cards through that platform Overdrive, Jose mentioned, along with ebooks and e-audiobooks, are magazines. If you were a KRL user in the past and you read magazines, you would have gone through our app called RB Digital. We have since shifted all of our magazines from RB Digital over to Overdrive as of December 30th. So this is a pretty new change, but it's super easy to use, no fear. You'll just try it out once and you'll be an expert. So if you're on our website here, go to the download tab here and you'll see audiobooks, ebooks, magazines, music, view all. Magazines are now in the same place as audiobooks and ebooks. So since we have such a large collection of those ebooks and e-audiobooks available, it'll be nice to just have them all in one place. So you can either click directly on here or click on the download tab and it will show you Overdrive. So click on this, Overdrive here, and it brings you to the KRL Overdrive website, krl.overdrive.com. And if you are using the app version of this, Libby, should work the same exact way. So you look up on the menu up top and you can see magazines. Click on that and it will show you a similar layout to our general ebook collection. If you are familiar with that at all, you can look at ones that are just added, most popular, something new. You can search by title right up here. You can go under collections to see different themes or different subjects. And if you're curious about this shift, or if you're new to KRL magazines, I will share one resource right here. We have a frequently asked questions page. It's krl.org/overdrive magazine FAQ. Easy enough. And so that just has some information about a digital magazines collection, especially if you were using it on RB Digital before it shifted over. The nitty gritty is all here. Basically, you can check out as many magazines as you want, as frequently as you like, and you'll never have to place holds in the magazines. They're always available, and they won't count against the number of ebooks that you can have checked out at one time. So it's a really cool service, especially if you're someone like me who's too lazy to buy magazines and always forgets to check them out. Now you can just read them on your phone while you are in between other activities you do on your phone, because everything is on our phones now anyway. So if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us at the library, send us an email, give us a call, stop by during curbside hours. We would be happy to help you out with that. I will pass the virtual mic back to Steve now. Thank you.
You're muted.
You're muted.
There we go. Yes, unmute myself. Okay, that's what the message in front of me was saying. So thank you, Jose and Priya, for sharing library programs and things like, you know, how to get a library card, how to read a magazine online. I can guarantee I'm going to do this stuff. And reading is one of the things that's on my list of to-dos for this year. I know it's futile to believe in resolutions, and I've written about it actually. A long time ago, I wrote a story about how people make actual real life changes. And it was one of the favorite stories I ever did. And I invested a lot of time and energy into it. And I interviewed a whole bunch of people about the changes they had made. I interviewed pastors and psychologists and academics and people who'd written books and all kinds of things. I put a lot of work into this thing, and it was a pretty good story. I thought it was my best work ever. And the way the Society of Professional Journalists works when they hand out awards is they send a note to the newspaper saying these reporters have won prizes, they have won awards from Society of Professional Journalists, and my name was on the list for that year. And so we were invited to a banquet that we only had to pay, I don't know, $60 to go to, unless the Sun paid for it, which I think they did back then. And this particular one was at Safeco Field. If you've ever sat in Safeco Field with about 1,000 people and had the whole field to yourself, and chances are, if you've been to a Mariners game in the last few years, you've maybe come close to that. But there's a lot more music going on and stuff when there's an actual baseball game. But we were all seated behind home plate. There were a couple of local sportscasters doing the emceeing. And basically all they do is they go through and they read the names of the prize winners. And it came up, there was a political category that came up. And I came in second place. It was a good story. But it completely took me by surprise. I had no idea. I knew I'd submitted it, but I don't think I had been thinking about that at all that night. I'd been thinking about the story about how people change. And when that category came up, my name didn't come up. And I was really disappointed because I thought sure I was coming home with a trophy. And in all the years that I was a reporter, I never came home with a trophy for something I wrote individually. And I'd been at the SBJs before when Josh Farley was there and he had like 2 of them in front of him. And I was really jealous. Josh isn't watching this because he's got other things going on. But if you tell him I was jealous, I won't deny it. And for group projects and for things that I was involved with there, where I did play a big role, there were trophies, but those stay with the company. So I have a Sun, somewhere around here, I have a Sun Star Award, which was Employee of the Month. And I got that because it was my turn. You know how Employee of the Month works in some places. Maybe it's a real honor wherever you're working. And if you've gotten it, I don't want to downplay it. Congratulations to you. I'm sure you deserve it. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we're going to do in the coming, one of the things I want to do, last month we had a month where I provided 4 questions to I think 4 different people, and it was a beautiful event, and it was planned in advance. It didn't take a ton of planning. And this format is difficult for telling stories a little bit because a lot of times storytelling is so much more, it feels more connected when we are with people in the community event. And I don't want to say that the things that we've heard here have not been valuable. They have, but I also recognize that this medium it does present some challenges for the kind of storytelling we want to do. If it didn't, I would have 7, 8, 9, 10 people begging to tell stories every month. And I honestly don't. And it's not because I don't promote things. I mean, I do put things out in advance, but there was a story about, or there's always a joke about Pat Riley. He was a coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. He had great talent on his team. And the joke was that he could just throw the basketballs out on the court and he'd tell the guys to go play and they would go play and win. He didn't have to do anything. That's how I felt with Story Night, is that I would provide a stage and say, come tell us what you got. And you all would, and it would be fabulous. And it would have, I'm not going to take no credit for that, but it was all because of your stories. And I really appreciated it when I didn't have to prepare a story. And the emceeing was fun enough. So that said, I'm going to, next month, our theme is going to be something around the vaccinations that are going on. I think I mentioned that I'm not anywhere near the front of the line, but I am prepared to go get it when my turn comes. And whether I post a picture of that, I thanked the doctors, the healthcare professionals who were showing pictures of them getting the shot. I thanked them because I thought at the time that it was really worthwhile to see them doing that. I understand that some people are seeing it differently now. And I think it's understandable. It's like, oh, well, look at you. You get it a line in the head. What makes you so special? So if I happen to get it at a time when it's not readily available to everyone, I will keep my mouth shut and encourage people to get their shots. And then when it's readily available to everyone, that's the point where I'll say, if anyone can go get a shot in this moment, go get it. I did it. I survived. This is, of course, assuming I do survive.
You vaccinated already?
Yeah. So anyway, tonight we have Doug here to tell a story, and then I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to talk about some other things. And so we won't be here terribly long. But Doug, there's no time limit. There's nobody holding up the folders. And Doug, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Are you ready to go? You're muted.
Yeah, I am ready to go, Steve.
Okay, I'm going to put the spotlight on you. Everybody, please give an online welcome to Doug Avery.
Hello, everybody out there. I don't even know that I so much had a story prepared for tonight. I mean, I kind of did work for my particular job. Was very busy over the last week. Way higher sales than anticipated for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So, and then the events of yesterday happened, and I got really distracted by what was going on in our capital, and I kind of thought, and Steve, I would need your permission for this because it's not exactly a story, and this is your platform, but I kind of thought I would use it tonight just because of what happened at the Capitol yesterday to show a side of me that I don't really bring out publicly much.
This is the voice of God. You proceed and say what you want.
Okay. So I used to write poetry a lot. Poetry has been my main form of writing escape for a very long time. And I used to do poetry readings, weekly poetry readings years ago, similar to Story Nights. And I really haven't done it in a while. And one of the things, and these would just be typical, just like everyday poetry readings. You go up and you read a couple simple poems you've written, and you get your finger snaps and stuff like that. And you leave the stage. And but one thing I've always wanted to get into is slam poetry. It's always been something that has interested me, and I've just never really it probably doesn't seem like it because I do story nights so often now, but getting up on stage for something that big is not always something that I'm willing to do. I get very anxious about it. And for the last couple of years, I have been writing this rather lengthy slam poem. It would be kind of my first real one ever. And every time something big and newsworthy has happened, I've added to it slowly. And I finished it sometime late last year after the pandemic hit and the events of George Floyd and all them got added into it. So I kind of, if you guys have a few minutes, I kind of would like to share that with you guys tonight, if that is okay. So
Yes, please.
it's generously called Soapbox is what I decided to title it, because this is kind of my soapbox. To preface this, I should also say that I'm not one to typically get involved with a lot of conversations around politics and things like that. I tend to hang back and listen to everybody else and don't really offer my opinion, mostly because it's done online these days. I do have a job where I work with the public, and so I tend to keep things to myself just for kind of offensively sakes. So this would also kind of be the first time I've really put my own thoughts out there on a whole lot of things. So I guess I'm just going to start with it. We got the masses slaughtering masses en masse at a mosque, at a mass, and even after class. I hate to sound crass, this too shall pass. Maybe not, if the current course should last. Now, perhaps we've learned enough from our past to teach the future that it's not okay to harass. I hope my daughter never has anybody accidentally touch her. Ask yourself this question when a chess presents for pinning. Are we offensively offending or defensively sinning? Nobody wants to play the game, but they all want to be winning. Hell, even the Cheshire cat isn't grinning. Now you can lay a body flat, but the world will keep spinning. These things are not okay, and there are things that should be. It's never too late for you and for me. And our children, they got a chance to set it all free. Teach them not to hate, but to love and see that we are the world, and the world is we. Could show them that if maybe the violence would cease, then maybe, just maybe, we can know some peace. They say we borrow from this earth as if we're on a leash, but can you renew faith if you're holding a leash? Who knows what will happen when we're all deceased, but right now it's like we're all diseased, trying to appease the appeased. And it comes down to greed when they want to be pleased. Give me all of your will, I'll give you what you need. Excuse me, I just sneezed. Now tell me, who's going to come and bless me if in your particular God I do not believe? Still, who am I to judge you for your beliefs? On your knees you stand for something at least. The same goes for knock knock, who's there? Police. Protest peacefully. But it's brutally plain to see how easily rights are violated with just one knee, one plea. Your speech is free up until you can't breathe. So who speaks for you when you're under 6 feet? Protest, riots, if you're quiet, where's the real forgery? For our rights, our religion, we're always fighting over something. It's the Democrats, it's Hollywood, it's Donald Trump, and controls of guns, and she can't marry her, but he can marry his cousin. That's exaggerated. Then again, it wasn't. How do you know what does and doesn't? In a world so twisted, full of contortion, pro-death penalty against abortion. How do you cross lines that breed such distortion? Remember the 99 and the one with the fortune? Working 40 hours a week just to get a little portion. The other got a garage that could park the portion. Then a pandemic came and told us all to force in. We found out real quick who was essential to steer the course, and a consortium of experts divided us with an assortment of it isn't, but it's definitely blown out of proportion. Behind the mask, we're equally vulnerable to the worst, and to err is to human. That's the nature of an earthling. Still, terror finds us all because we shoot first and ask no questions like life isn't worth it. And I wonder how many bodies do we put in the hearse, and how long do we put up with all of this hurting before we realize, despite our differences, we're all still a person. And yet we stand upon a soapbox like a cage is just lurking behind us because opinions are like Cyrus the virus just smirking, when the real heir to the con is the government jerking us so hard there's a tax on Jergens. They say think outside the box if your ideas aren't working. Well, we need to smash that box, because one thing is for certain: if we don't come together, that's it. Show's over. Draw curtains. We got the masses slaughtering masses en masse. And that's what I have for you guys tonight.
Doug, thank you so much for that. Don't go away. In fact,
Hey.
I want to turn this to actual, I'm going to take the spotlight off of you. And can you tell me about, this is I did actually, can you talk about yesterday, what it was like for you? I mean, you mentioned that you were paying close attention to it. I was too. In a way that I never have. I watched them after it was all over. I watched Congress confirm the election, and I had never done that before. And I love politics. I mean, well, I should say I have in my life. I have loved the political arena. I covered it for some time, on mostly a local level, but also state. And occasionally I got to go do some national things. And that process was fascinating. The actual process that was supposed to happen uninterrupted yesterday.
Right.
But what was your day like yesterday?
So it's actually kind of funny, because I mean, in the last 4 years, I have probably followed the news more than I ever have, just in general. There's just something about, it's just something that's, I've been drawn to being a little more active and trying to know what's going on in the world. And I've always been a history buff myself. I love looking into history. I love reading history. And the same goes for like not quite involved, but West Wing, probably one of my favorite shows ever. I really enjoyed Madam Secretary too. Like there's just something about the things surrounding that that I really enjoy, like getting into, or even even reading behind the history of Lincoln passing the amendment was something that I was always into. And then yesterday I was actually on my break at work when everything started to really unfold. And I've been in the habit of, I'll go sit in my car and I'll turn on the news radio for my daily dose. And it just went, for me personally, like I'm sitting there and I'm scrolling my Facebook while I'm listening to the news. And then they cut away and they were like, well, we have some breaking news. And it just started with audio of a reporter was like, this is what's going on right now on Capitol Hill. And I was like, oh, this just took a turn. But then my Facebook also started blowing up with notifications, like when all these news networks that I follow are going live. And I watched it with, it was a mix of like awe and dismay at the same time. And I grew up where we watched us bomb Iraq on the news. Mm-hmm. Like, so these are things that I've seen personally on the news. And even things like that, like I'm watching what was happening yesterday at the Capitol, and I ended up getting back from my break late because I couldn't take my eyes away from what was going on. And I just couldn't believe that. Like, I know, it was talked about, it was mentioned, like people were like, this is a thing that could probably maybe happen, but then you actually see it happen. And I couldn't believe that I was like, and it was like watching the Seahawks game in simulcast with the radio linked up to the video, like, because the radio newscast is so much more profound than live newscasts. And it was just such a bizarre feeling, it was like witnessing it was honestly like I felt like I was witnessing a battle in the Coliseum, like just the Spartans going at it.
Yeah, that was interesting. You were talking about how you went back late for work, or you're late. Your break was a little longer than you expected. Yeah. I can totally relate to that because I kind of have to get to a point where I realize they're just repeating the same things over and over because there is no new info that's coming out. And so I better go do what I'm going to do. But I was pretty fixated. I was pretty, I was watching this pretty intensely at the office. When I'm at the office, and yesterday I was actually in the office. Most days I'm working from home, but it's real easy to hook up. I got this notification that NBC Live was broadcasting live from the Capitol. and you just click on a link and you're in a rabbit hole. And,
Yeah.
And they actually did I think they did a pretty good job of continuing to present new information. And eventually somebody asked the question that I had was, how is it possible that the Capitol Police were so easily overrun? That was my chief question of the day. I wasn't surprised that this happened. People are expressing dismay. But there's been lots of chatter out there about this. That said, let's go back to the poetry. There was a place in Bremerton that was doing poetry slams, and I remember Allison Loris or poetry events. I don't know if they were slams. I don't know if people were clicking and all that kind of stuff. But have you been to an event where they do the clicking?
I mean, most poetry readings I've been to just do the clicking because that's like a poetry thing.
That's what you do. Okay.
Right. But it's also funny that you mentioned Allison, because I met Allison in a writer's workshop for poetry, right. And it was her and the person who was running the workshop who actually introduced me to your story night, which is why I ended up there, 3 years ago now, doing your story night, was because I was at a poetry reading and somebody happened to bring it up, and I was like, that sounds really fun. So
yeah, so there have been events locally for that, and that, I mean, listen, I will tell you, and after the Black Lives Matter, after George Floyd, we had an evening where I spoke with 3 Black women on story night. We, nobody felt like telling stories that night. And so I basically sat and listened. Asia read poetry. She read us a couple of poems, and it was so perfect for the evening. And I think your poem is perfect for giving the event. And before that night, I didn't feel like we could just skip by everything that happened and just have a regular old story night. Mm-hmm. And so we pulled off something that was really kind of cool in that moment. And I didn't feel the same way this time. And it's bizarre because that was unprecedented what happened. It was a huge breach. I didn't realize how big it was until later. And when they're talking about the last time this has happened was when the British did it, Yeah. So this, I don't think I recognized how big a deal it was. I had I guess, while I was mesmerized by it and couldn't keep my eyes off it, I had all the confidence in the world that eventually everybody would get hustled out of there. That the Congress would do what it was supposed to do. And maybe I was naive because it could have been way worse than it was. Anyway, I just wanted to, that event, it really, it was a bigger deal than I realized. And I guess what it has meant for me, and did we have the theme was now what, and so this is the thing, is that this whole since November 3rd, that's the question that keeps coming up for me. Now what? Because new things happen. Now what? And I keep expecting that new things are going to happen. And so what I'm not surprised by anymore is new things happening. And so maybe after 2 months of watching this transpire, and not just 2 months, but maybe an entire year of watching one huge event after another go down like this, it's becoming less and less surprising, which is sad. That's not healthy. And I said it was unprecedented, but every time something like this happens, it's no longer unprecedented. And so this, we're sad because it had never happened before. Well, it's happened now. And how are we going to stop this? I don't have the answer to that. by the way, Kim sends her props. She loved the poem, and she takes full credit for inviting you to your first story night. I remember when you were telling that story, I was like, oh yeah, I think Kim was the catalyst. So yes, thank you. Great poem.
Thank you.
Very fitting for the time that we're in. I'm gonna tell a little story that deals with now what, and a little bit. So when I was, and I'll start. No, maybe I won't start with that. I'll get to something. I'll tell the story and then we'll go. And the story is going to end mid-story. I don't think I've told this story to a story night audience before, and I'm not going to get all the way to the end of it. I'm going to end midstream. I'm telegraphing that right away. I guess I should spotlight myself. So forget everything I've said so far. And now I'm telling my story. So when I was in my early 30s, I was living in Utah, and I've been living there about 9 years, which is about 9 years, about 6 years longer than I had intended to live in Utah. I went to college there. I planned to go to college. I had wanted to go to college there my whole life. And I had really liked Utah a lot in my youth, but something about once I got to college, I never intended to stay there. And part of that has to do with an ego, feeling like I got to spread my wings and go make my way somewhere else. And it would just feel too easy there in Utah. So that was my plan. And my parents lived in Southern California. When I was approaching my last semester, it didn't look like I was going to have a job right away, but it was going to be really easy for me to go home to Covina, California, which is 20 miles east of Los Angeles or so. 2 hours to the beach, 1 hour of traffic is good. No, actually, in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, they say it's 4 hours, but 2 hours if the traffic is good. And I just think that's a horrendous slander on the city of West Covina. I was optimistic that things would be fine. Things had always kind of been fine for me. The plan was I had a degree in journal. I was, finishing college. I was going to have a degree in journalism. In my last semester, what was intended to be my last semester were the summer months, and I was going to graduate in August and then go home and try to launch my job search from there. And the president, or the whoever the bureau chief was for the for the Scripps League newspapers in Washington, D.C., visited our campus, and over lunch he asked if I would like to come intern there. And I had not planned on that, but it seemed like an opportunity that would be too good to pass up. So I talked it over with my parents and decided to go. And my hope was, because I'd interned in DC before, my hope was that while I was there, I could find work somewhere. And that if I didn't, I would return home to Los Angeles and start the job search from there. Well, about in the middle of that semester, my parents sold their house in LA and moved to Utah. And my work in DC wasn't so strong. My college work hadn't been so great. I'd been competent, but nothing, I hadn't done really anything compelling. And so I didn't get work back there. And as it turned out, I would end up going home now, was going to be Utah. And I had jobs here and there. I think I've told the story about how I decided to take a job because I took a job because nothing else had been offered. And it's funny, I didn't want to work in Utah, but the one job I was willing to take was a job I didn't want, and it was in Utah. And I took it, and I hated it. And I lasted a couple of years, ended up getting politely escorted out. Then I took another job that I liked for the travel, but then, and I've told stories about that job, but there was plenty wrong with that job, and that company went under. And so then I kept going through these employers over and over and over, and I just wasn't making my way. And I'm a single Mormon guy. I'm not doing well getting married either, which is kind of, if you're single and you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you're a man, it is your job to go get married and start a family. And I wasn't doing my job. I'd had these relationships that some of them worked pretty well, and then they'd fizzle anyway. And we got to a point in my early 30s where I had this one relationship with a woman who had come from Oregon. And while we were dating, I had been to Oregon before. But we, with a few other people, we decided to take a trip up there. And when we got to go there, I got to get, go to places like the Rose Garden. So I decided I decided in that moment I wanted to live in Oregon. And it was great because she was from there, so it was going to work out just fine. We were going to find our way to get back there. Well, we broke up. Things didn't work out. And I stayed in Utah. And at some point, it was probably a time just about like right now where even though resolutions don't work, I stopped and thought about where I wanted to be in my life and that kind of thing. I remember going up to the Capitol in Salt Lake City, which has a great view of Salt Lake. And I'm sitting up there and I made a decision in that moment. I don't know what, I can speculate on what all the things are that inspired it, but I decided I was going to move to Oregon, but I wasn't going to go until I had a job there. And for somebody with no discernible skills, it was a gutsy, bold kind of decision. So I made the decision to do that. And when I did that, I'm sorry, I'm looking for, there's going to be a visual aid later. I had to look for the right pen. When I made that decision, one of the things I did is I bought this book. And I saw an ad in the classifieds of the newspapers. I don't know how many of you remember newspapers, but it was an ad for make money reading books. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And I got $30. I sent off for it. The book comes. And what it told me was that I could approach publishers with my background and resume. And I was a writer. I had written and I had read things, and I could approach them and say, I can read your books for you. Because the story was that publishers would pay people to read their books to provide input. It's not like a full-on editor job, but it's kind of a feedback loop. It's kind of like now, if you write a book, you have about 20 people you send your book to, and you say, can you read this? And in exchange, I'll send you a copy of the book or something like that, whatever you're going to do. And I sent off for this thing, and what they said to do was send off a letter to these publishers, include your resume, and tell them that you're ready to do this. Well, I didn't see this as full-time work, but I thought, well, when I do get full-time, I can do this from anywhere. As one of there weren't as many jobs back then that you could do from just about anywhere. I can do this from anywhere. I can, do it as a freelance basis, and I can get this going and continue it once I do move to Oregon, once I find the work that I'm going to do there. So I wrote to, I think, 10 publishers in Utah and 15 in Oregon. And I heard back from 3 of the publishers in Oregon. I didn't hear back from anybody in Utah, but I heard back from a few in Oregon. And one of them said, we understand there's a book that tells people that they can contact publishers and that they'll pay people to read their books. We don't know of any publishers who do this. So that was great. But then what happened was I got a phone call from one of the publishers, so somebody who worked for one of the publishers. And she said, I'm looking for my replacement, and it looks like you'd be a good fit. She hadn't even noticed the letter that I had sent about reading books. She just saw a letter with a resume in it. And so I got in contact with the owners, and they had, they were looking for a replacement for her, and they sent me a questionnaire. And this was in the they're kind of in the personal development arena, a little new agey, which at the time was really right up my alley. And so they asked these questions, and I knew I had just killed it. I nailed it. This letter, this written interview that they had sent, I was just fantastic at it. And they, I talked to one of the owners, and she said, we like it. You've answered everything exactly the way we would have wanted you to. When we don't want to have you come up to interview for us specifically, but if you get an interview with somebody else, let us know and we'll schedule to have you come up. And I should have, maybe some red flags should have come up about that, but they didn't. And what happened was I went from wanting a job anywhere in Oregon to wanting that job in Oregon. And so I set about trying to create interviews other ways. Well, at one point, a friend of mine who owned a company and was going to a trade show in New Orleans said, will you come do the, help me work this trade show? And he's going to pay me a few $100 for it. It's money. Of course I'm going to go to, and it was getting to go to a place I'd never been. And so we go to New Orleans, we go into this hotel, and I got to experience the experience of wearing I don't know what they call it, like, wearing a blanket or something like that, because it's just, and this was not the bad time. Well, it was actually not a great time of year, but it was just amazingly muggy for somebody living in Utah, where it's amazingly dry. And after we got done setting up the trade show, we wanted to go see the French Quarter, and we didn't want to drive over there. So we asked the people in the hotel, how do you get to the French Quarter? They said, well, there are, express buses that take you directly there from right out here in front of the hotel. And we got on this bus that looked like a trolley. There were 2 seats left, one next to a woman that was immediately on my left, and one that was next to somebody else in the back, probably a guy. And this guy I was with said, well, I'm married, I shouldn't sit next to her. It's a precursor of Mike Pence, I guess. Mother would not approve. And so he said I should sit next to her. And I did. And I'm a shy guy. She was very pretty. And, but she spoke to me. She reached out and said, what are you doing here? And we started talking about the trade show and that. And at some point I mentioned, my goal is to get a job as an editor or writer somewhere in Oregon. She says, oh, I know a company in Oregon. I'll put you in touch with them. And so we stayed in contact. She got me in touch with another company, and they agreed to interview me. So I got to go up and interview with them, and that allowed me to interview with this other company. And so the other company had me in. That was the job I wanted. I went in on a Saturday and interviewed there. And then on Monday, I went and interviewed with the company that had actually invited me up to interview, and I drove home. And a couple of weeks later, the company I wanted to work for offered me a job. Now, there's a prop. If I had, I'm going to draw a picture of the United States. It's going to be very crude, but close enough, right? That's the United States. New Orleans is somewhere around here, right? Utah is here. Okay. Oregon is over there. Now, if I had, and I can't do, I'm going to have to turn around. I can't, I'm doing a pretty good job. If I had wanted, I was here, I wanted a job here. If I had planned this out, would I have said, go to a trade show over here and meet somebody who knows somebody up here, and you'll be able to go from here to there? Could I have mapped it out that way? Could I have mapped it out? No. The thing was, I was open to possibilities. A possibility fell in my lap because I had this clear intention of getting somewhere. And so I moved up, and I was successful in getting that job. Now, I'm saying the story doesn't end there, and it doesn't. In fact, I've told you a lot of precursor to that story that I don't tell in the regular story I tell, but there's a reason I'm bringing this up. There was no real now what. The now what came when I decided I was going to move to Oregon. Because it's like, okay, you've made this decision. Now, what are you going to do about it? And what I did about it was to get a book. And this is the part of the map that, part of the map that I didn't bring up. Are you going to buy a book that is essentially a scam that's eventually going to get you hooked up with a company in Oregon? Is a scam going to help you? Well, the book was a scam. It probably never should have been written or sold. I hope they didn't make a lot of money from it, but because of that, I was able to get to work, get the job that I had. I could not have mapped that out. So the point I had was, do what you have to do to consider, if you've got big plans this year, if you've got some desires that you have for this year. And again, I'm not necessarily huge on resolutions, but I've been working on some things for a while. And there's something I'm going to do right now, and that is, I'm going to draw a picture here. That's not very good. That's a W. If you've seen this before, don't spoil it for everybody. Don't shout it out. Not that anybody's going to hear you. There is a delay here, so maybe somebody can guess what's on here, but Kim may be the only one watching. I don't know. The numbers aren't huge tonight, but, and I mean but, this is a but, and it's on a line, and I'm going to put my butt on the line tonight for a couple of things. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little, I'm going to spend more time making sure that we have, I have held story night events, the online ones, as kind of a placeholder until we can get back live. And we've benefited in some ways. I've learned some things about storytelling. I've learned some things about presentations. The Zoom thing has worked great. Being able to present it on YouTube has been fantastic. I'm grateful for that. But sometimes I find myself a week before the event scrambling, saying, what am I going to do? We did something last time that was really good. And I had to reach out to, like I said, I reached out to 4 people who I really wanted to, but I want each event to have something unique and special. And hopefully tonight's will meet that goal. But I want this to be something that people look forward to and that I can be excited to promote. And that's going to come up. So part of that story was where I was at that point in my life. And I should say, when I grew up, things really didn't come that difficult to me. I was a fairly good athlete. I was a really good, I mean, you know, I was smart enough to be a good student. I didn't have to work as hard as others did to get B's or high C's. I got elected student body president. Just in the real rush there was, it wasn't giving the speech and everything like that. That was great. But one of the great realizations is when I calculated it and figured out that I could actually win. That was such a huge moment for me, and I think that it just had never occurred to me before. And so I had things come pretty well for me. And it was probably in my last year of college when things started to get really difficult. And I mentioned that was when I went and did this internship. There were things that were great about that internship, but there were struggles the year before in college, and particularly with the student newspaper. There were struggles in the class. My last class, the last class that I saw my grade for was an astronomy class. And I was not a great college student, and astronomy was something I had to take. And I went and saw what my grade was, and it was the only D I ever got in college, and I've never been so happy for a grade in my life because it meant I was going to be able to graduate. So, you know, that pretty much aces me out of grad school unless I don't know, want to go. Never mind. I'm not going to disparage any fine institute of higher learning. And it was tough getting work. And when I took a job I didn't love. And I was struggling romantically in my relationships with women, and all of these things were going on. And so I had gone from a place where things had come easy, and I was always confident that things would work out well, to being in a place where I had kind of really harvested some serious self-doubts. And I made a decision anyway that I was going to do something. I had all the reason in the world to doubt myself. Last month, I read a quote from this book, The War of Art. And I said, I don't know that I'd recommend it. And the only reason I said that was because I don't know everybody would love it. But I know it's meant a lot to me, and I'm reading it again. But one of my goals is to get this read quickly because I am planning to loan this to somebody at work. And I read a quote from it last month, but I want to go to this point of self-doubt. Self-doubt can be an ally. This is because it serves as an indicator of aspiration. It reflects love of something we dream of doing and desire to do. If you find yourself asking yourself and your friends, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Chances are you are. The counterfeit innovator is wildly self-confident. The real one is scared to death. So one of the things, of course, I want to get better at is storytelling. Constantly want to do that. It's one of the main reasons I was motivated to start Story Night was because I wanted to be good at what I was hearing people do on the Moth. And one of the great helps that I came across this last year was this book. It's called Storyworthy. I do recommend this book. It will give you exercises and things you can do. It's written by Matthew Dix. He's won a lot of Moth storytelling events, slams, the whatnot. And if nothing else, reading something like this helps promote. It provokes thoughts, and so. And provoking thoughts, I think, is sometimes where we go. So I have made some goals that I'm not going to mention, but a few I do want to bring up because some of them will affect you. One is I'm going to restart the Story Night podcast. I'm going to start doing that again. I'm going to figure out a way to make that happen and have that be a regular thing again. Whether anybody listens to it, I enjoy doing it. That's reason enough. I have another podcast in mind that I will launch this year, and it's a podcast called How Did You Get Here? And I love the story of journeys. And I told the story of my journey from living in Utah to how I got to Oregon, and then later how I got to the place where I went to a place of confidence and lacking self-confidence. I love stories of the journey. And there are people out there who I'm really interested in talking to about how they got from where they are to where they are. So thank you, Kim, for thumbs up for the podcast. And that's on a delay. So that's the last podcast. If you're interested in the next one, you and I need to chat. But the How Did You Get Here podcast would basically deal with how people got from where they were to where they are. And it doesn't have to be success stories or things like that. And in theory, it's not going to be celebrities. It's not like I'm going to turn down celebrities, but that ground has been covered on things like Mark Maron's podcast, the WTF podcast. I'm going to assume this is a family audience, so I'm not going to name what WTF stands for, but I think most of you know. And other podcasts, Dax Shepard interviews people and gets their stories about how they got where they are. And those are great to listen to. But celebrity stories have been told all the time. Like I said, I'm not going to turn them down, but at the moment, I don't have access to multiples. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Another thing that I'm going to do, and this is where I'm kind of putting my butt on the line, I think, is that I've been interested. Last year, I wrote some things that I tried to get published in different places. Maybe and there's a story behind why I aimed where I did, but I went to publications. I submitted a couple of things to the New York Times, and they didn't get published, and they were more like column kind of things. There is an organization called Substack. They publish what are basically newsletters. I'm going to start a newsletter. And it's going to be about whatever's interesting to me. And my commitment at this point is to write something once a week. I will let you know how to find this newsletter. I'll let you know on Story Night page, on my Twitter account. And also, I've had this for a while, but I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I pick the right one. Oh, I gotta go over here. Sorry, the sausage is being made as we speak. All right, I gotta step back for a second. Let's see if it shows up here. And if I hit share, I don't know if you can. I hope you can see this. So yeah, I am screen sharing. So this is a website I've had for my stuff. I've had plans to do some things in the future for quite a while, and I'm just now solidifying things. I've been working on some projects to make this site worthwhile, but you can see yourselves here. Story Night is linked there. This is the How Did You Get Here podcast.
Steve, we just see your desktop.
Oh, well, great. Okay, let me stop sharing this, and let me try one more time. And if it doesn't work, then this is not okay. This is going to work now. And let me know. This is such a Zoom meeting. Can you see it now?
Looks good.
Okay, so this is the website that I've been setting up. I was inspired by, like, once again, by Josh Farley to do something like this. Josh Farley has a website. This is fieldofsteve.com. You can go there. Field of Steve is something I came up with a long time ago, and it has stuck. The How Did You Get Here podcast will be home here. You can see that you can find yourself here. So you might see yourself in this picture. You can see, looks like we have Priya and Jose there. And I bet Kim's over here somewhere. And I'm back here. And I have been a writer. You know, I used to work for the Kids Up Sun. I was a writer. I do want to do some public speaking and host MC work. So this is a site that's a work in progress. The Substack thing will be called That Long Walk. It'll be linked here. And the How Did You Get Here podcast will be linked here as well. So that's this is me kind of putting my butt on the line. The reason I'm bringing this up is because now that I've said this, I have to do it. And the final thing is I'm going to read a book. I'm going to read several books. I know it's a huge leap to think that I will actually read books. No, I'm going to write a book. And I've been working on that. I was working on that last year. And it goes into, it is that story of moving to Oregon, but it goes beyond that. And it is based on a story that I've told up in Squim with our, at least on the online version, with the folks at the Out Loud Story Slam. And anyway, and it's been a story that I've have kind of cultivated over time. And I've written a book before. I don't know if you know this. I may have mentioned it once or twice. The first time I finished a book draft was when I was living in Oregon. After I had moved, I had started working on this book before I left, and it was a novel, and I finished the draft and I worked on it. The first draft was written in third person, and then the second draft, the first draft was written in, it was written in first person. And then I thought, well, no, let's write it in third person, which was a mistake. I should have kept it in first person, but I didn't. Anyway, I worked on it, finally felt like I was ready to submit it to publishers. And in 1999, what I thought was a publisher said, yeah, we'll publish, it had to work with them, but they eventually said they would publish this book. And it was a book called Going Too Far. And if you go on Amazon and see Stephen Gardner, and this is where the lack of self-confidence comes in. I hated this cover. And the process of working with the publisher had not been good. It had not been up to my liking. There was no real serious editing. It was basically all on me. This is not technically a self-published book, but it might as well have been, except that I didn't get to really pick the cover for it. I had an idea for a cover, and this was their version of what I was coming up with. And it was like the easiest thing in the world. It's not far from the image I wanted as far as the story that the image told. Anyway, because of that, I didn't have much confidence in this. And so it, I think it probably sold about 20 copies, maybe more, because the publisher would have kept whatever money there was from it. Years later, I did another podcast. It was called Field of Steve, or at times in the Narrative Arts. I switched back and forth. That was early in, 2011 or so. I did about 27. It was my first experience podcasting, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of work. And I think This American Life, it was me doing it all by myself. And like I said, it was a lot of fun. I think there were probably 27 episodes that year. But what I did was I took those episodes and I created a book called Spill Your Guts. And it's based on one of the stories. That title is based on one of the stories in the book. And it may have been one that I've told on stage at Story Night before. If you remember a story about a girl named Jane, that's that story. And so I have done this before. This one I did myself. This one was fully self-published, and I kind of undertook it because I wanted to know that I could do it. I could learn how to do it. And this one was done through Amazon. You can look it up, Spill Your Guts, and it's still available because it's a print-on-demand thing. And I haven't made any changes to it, and I want to, but publishing these books is a lot of work. and formatting books, and to go through that whole process again for that book, I just haven't decided that I haven't decided to do that. Those are not commitments to, because in theory, it would be nice to republish both of these and have them be more current, more to what I like. And it's a lot of work that I'm like, well, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the next book. And that one, I won't do through Amazon. I may self-publish. I'll try to get a publisher, but I'm not going to stress too much about that, because part of this is this, part of it is to promote this part of, I'm scrolling the screen, but I'm not sharing the screen anymore. Anyway, when you saw the public speaker part, that's part of it. I love being on stage. When I ran for student body president and they announced my turn to give the speech, there was this thunderous applause from the audience that I just loved. And when I told that story at the Moth Grand Slam in front of 800 people, that interaction with the audience was just so huge for me. It just felt like such a huge connection. And so I'm an attention suck, and I'm willing to own that now. And I have to learn to be a self-promoter, which means getting over those doubts that I've talked about. I am scared to death of all of this, but now I have put my butt on the line. And so because I've told you, I have to do it now. So the first evidence of this is one of the podcasts will come out. I may be in touch with some of you about the How Did You Get Here podcast, because there are a few of you, at least a few of you, whose stories I'm really interested in. One final thing, as riveted as I was yesterday, one of the things that drove everything home was how, and I've thought this for a long time, we think that we are special, and perhaps we are, but not necessarily the ways that we like to pretend we are. I guess I'm reluctant to bring up the phrases that I hear about how great America is, but this democracy that we have is fragile, and it exists because we allow it to exist. And I hope that perhaps out of yesterday, this is what we're reminded of, that this is an agreement we have in this country to live the way we do. And at any moment, we could undo this agreement. And at times, in protests past, we have worked to undo parts of the agreement, parts of the things that we agreed to. In the 60s, and in the 70s, when people were marching against Vietnam, what they were saying is I don't think anybody was saying death to this America, but they were saying this America can't do this anymore. This last year, when we had the protests, it was about civil rights, and civil rights protests have been going on for a long time. It's about this agreement. And one of the things that yesterday could have been discouraging, it could have really been discouraging, but I've been inspired for about 6-7 months, ever since he said it, when Obama said at the convention, and I'm sorry if if you don't love Obama, I don't care. I said I was sorry. I'm not really. When Obama said, when he mentioned those who fought for civil rights in the 60s and the 50s, going back to the slave days, if anybody had the right to give up on the ideal that America is, it was them, and they didn't. So I won't either. So let's invite the group back in before I get more mushy. Thank you all for joining us. Let me ask, I'd like my friends from the library to, again, can you once again tell us about some of the programs that you have going on, and then then we will call it good for tonight.
Yes, I just would like to echo some of your words today before saying anything. Also, I would like to also say that maybe events like that happened yesterday, it was not like not what we how we do it, but I have seen these things like before. I was telling these things before connecting with Steve and Priya. But Puerto Rico has a long story about fights as well, not fights, but about civil rights and all that. And I can say that things will come better because there are more good people. There are more good people than maybe bad people, and I'm not making a comparison about one thing or the other. But we are all cemented in love. We are all cemented on the spirit of entrepreneurship, and we are cemented as a union. That's why states are together. You guys are like a union. We are part of a union. You have been expanded since the 1776, and the ideals are the things that are bring us together and all love and all that. So thank you for that reflection. But I think that when history happens and events like yesterday happen, it's just like a warning call, like, hey, this thing should not happen again. And people suffer, and at the end, we are on the same boat. So when it comes on library programs, I would like also to invite you all to Enlighten. Enlighten will be celebrated on next Friday. I can share my screen really quick here, if I may, so you can see it. If you go to our library webpage on krl.org, we have a wonderful calendar here, and you can pick any day. So if you're bored at your house and you say, hey, I want to connect to a program, or I don't know what to do, you can like maybe click over the day and that you're like are planning to do something, and you will have like available programs there. For next Friday, the 15th, you click here, and we have like 3 programs: Winter Wonderland, Teens, Dungeons and Dragons, and Enlighten, which is a group that they are dedicated to invite monthly speakers on different topics. And for January, it will be Let It Not Happen Again. Oh my God, it's something that we were like kind of talking. So all those history lessons from the Japanese American War and Explosion, there will be a talk about that. So we invite you all for next Enlighten, and thank you very much you all for staying tuned tonight.
Yeah.
And I will pass my mic to Priya if Priya wants to say something else.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you for sharing that, Jose. And also, Steve, thank you for your reflections on current world we're living in. I will say, just to keep in mind, because it's been very strengthening for me at least, is that with all of the craziness going on, it's really hard to process it on your own sometimes, especially if you're used to doing that. And there's going to be a whole range of reactions. Like for me, I try to logic my way through things, and sometimes that's just not possible. And so it takes some time to process, and sometimes you turn inward, sometimes you turn outward. I have been finding a lot of healing and value in just engaging with as many art forms as I can find. I'm reading a lot, I'm watching movies, I'm listening to music, and finding that that's helping me just deal with it. But for a lot of people also, you need to talk it out, and that is a-okay, and honestly one of the best ways to just like make sense of what's going on in your head and the world around you. So I would absolutely encourage people to connect with your loved ones, reach out to your neighbors, stop by the library at curbside. We'd love to have a quick chat with you. In terms of programming, we do have a monthly program based around anti-racism that I help facilitate. It's called the Anti-Racism Learning Circle, and that meets on the second Thursday of each month. So we'll be meeting next week on Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. We have a general topic for each session, but really if you want to just show up and start to unpack those feelings or questions you might have around race and racism, the events of last year and ongoing protests, subtle acts of racism that you or people you know might be experiencing, that's a place where you can come and ask questions and work things out. Our topic for next week is health and race. So looking at the effects of health practices, public health policy on people of color and how those have changed over time. We will also have some time to talk about the events of yesterday because I think it's important just to have a space for that. So I would encourage you all to join on Zoom next Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. and all of our info is on the website on January 14th. But again, feel free to reach out to Jose or myself or your local library and just honestly tell us that you need to chat for a bit. That's totally fine too. We really enjoy connecting with you all, and it sort of helps us stay grounded as well. So I'll pass it back over to you, Steve. Thank you. And you're muted.
Muted.
I hate that. Thank you all, three of you, for joining us tonight. Kim asked the question about one book, one community. What do you want to say about that?
Well, we have defined the topic, but not the book, and the topic and the book will be around hope and resilience. So it's proper for these times. And I am also happy that maybe we are not going to announce it tonight, but I'm happy that Steve agreed on make the April's topic hope and resilience. Maybe is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
I think it's proper for everything that happened, and I look forward for a good reflection on April as well about the topic of hope and resilience. So we will be putting announcements on the webpage, and we will be, of course, keeping you updated through Story Night, because you guys will be one of the first to know about the book and also all the activities that the library will come up with.
Thank you. I'm not muted, right? For anyone who's been watching tonight, thank you for doing that. And share it with people. If you think this was valuable, share this recording. It'll be on YouTube. It'll stay there. If there's a particular point you want people to jump in, it's fairly easy to figure out how to tell people where to go. At least in as far as you can find the moment in the recording where that will make the most sense. One thing before I forget, Doug, I especially want to compliment you on the sneeze in your poem. That was legit. I really thought you had sneezed. In fact, I don't believe conspiracies, but part of me is still saying, did he just accidentally sneeze and make that up on the fly? No, but yeah. But thank you. That was one of the highlights tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Well, we're gonna be back, and we'll be back next month, first Thursday of the month, which I believe is that would be the 4th. And the theme is going to be somewhere around vaccination, shots, something like that. Around the, anymore, we'll just wait for the latest piece of big news, and we'll just do themes about that. No, at the same time, maybe we don't want to talk about what's in the news all the time, so we'll figure it out. But at any rate, next month the theme is going to be something around that. We'll get our heads together and figure something out here pretty soon. And does anybody else have anything to add tonight?
Steve, I just wanted to add briefly, I was listening to you put your butt on the line, and I know everybody else mentioned it already, and I just kind of wanted to say the same sentiments that they have. Like, I want to thank you for, giving your views on what's going on, but also like, also being motivational, because, what you do, like what I've come to learn from the story nights and your podcast and stuff, and it's just like, it's just kind of like, it's just motivational, like watching you do what you do and then put your own butt on the line. And I just want to say, like, it's kind of ironic because I went out and bought my very first vlogging kit a couple of weeks ago. So, because it's been something that I've been thinking about doing, but always so like anxious to get out there and do it. So knowing I'm not alone in that anxiousness kind of helps, so that other people are just as scared to do their own adventures. So, and
that's what they are. They are adventures. I'm glad to hear others are putting their their butts on the line. That story, by the way, that I told half of, that's the one I keep. You know, when you went back to Connecticut earlier this year, that's part of the story that I think relates to you. But I'm not telling you the ending because the ending is completely different. But and your story is your story, my story is my story, and there are probably parts that can relate. But folks, put your butt on the line, do something. And now, you know, so I was inspired to put my butt on the line tonight. Now I'm living with the dread of the fact that I do have to follow through with all of this stuff. And I will, because I said it. I know myself well enough that I'm going to do all these things. One of the other things about the War of Art, the book that I held up, one of the things it talks about in terms of resistance is procrastination doesn't kill you because you say you're never going to do something. You say, no, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it tomorrow. And so I guess it's time to get to work. That's why it's nice to have a schedule for story night. First Thursday every month, I know I got to be here and do this. So thank you all. Kim, thank you for your comments. She says, thanks, friends. I miss you all. Kim, by the way, I got rave reviews about your assistance with my friend tonight. So thank you for that. Like we're having this, 4-person conversation here on YouTube for all America to see. You folks from the Priya and Jose, do you have anything else to add tonight? Okay. You don't have to.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us. And as always, we look forward to hearing your story.